I don't see an animal. This is my co-pilot.
Okay.
How can a street cat change a life? That's the question that James Bowen, a homeless musician and drug addict, had to answer when he met Bob, an orange cat who refused to leave his side. Their story is one of resilience, redemption, and friendship, and it will touch your heart and inspire you to see how James and Bob went from the streets to the stars. James Bowen is a homeless musician in London. He plays the guitar on the street, but he doesn't make much money. Sometimes people give him food, but not always good food. One time, someone gave him a sandwich that had already been bitten. James is also addicted to drugs. He wants to stop, but it's hard. One night, he meets another drug user named Boz, who asks him where to find some heroin. James doesn't know, and he tells Boz to leave him alone. James is hungry, so he goes to a shop to buy some food, but he doesn't have enough money and the shopkeeper throws him out. James has nowhere to sleep, so he walks around the city. He sees Boz again, who invites him to sleep in a car that he found unlocked. Boz also has some heroin, and he offers it to James. James is tempted, and he takes it. He doesn't know that it's dangerous to mix heroin with methadone, a medicine that he takes to help him quit drugs. The next morning, the owner of the car sees that his car is being towed away. He runs to stop it, but he also sees Boz and James inside. Boz wakes up and runs away, but James is still asleep. The car owner thinks that he is dead, and he panics, and he is taken to the hospital where doctors save him. He also has hepatitis, a disease that he got from a dirty needle. When James wakes up, he sees a social worker, Val. She is angry with him because he almost died. She tells him that he has to change his life or else he will die. She asks him about his family, but James says that they don't care about him. He has no one to help him. Val tries to find a place for James to live, but it's not easy. Many homeless people need housing. She wonders why she cares so much about him. She thinks that he has potential and that he can be happy if he gets off the street. She hopes that he will find a way to do that. James, a recovering drug addict, tries to reconnect with his father, Jack, but he's rejected by him and his stepmother, Hillary. Jack gives him 20 pounds and leaves. He goes to his flat, which he got from his support worker, Val, and finds an injured cat on his doorstep. He takes him to his neighbor, Betty, a dog walker and hippie who names him Bob, and tells him to take him to a charity vet. James takes Bob to the vet, but he misses his meeting with Val. The vet charges him 22 pounds for the antibiotics, which he pays with his father's money. He struggles to give Bob the pills, and takes him back to Betty, who does it easily. They talk, and Betty says she hates drugs and drug users because her brother died of an overdose. He's still on methadone, feels awkward, and says he is a musician. James sees Val, who is angry that he missed their meeting. They had a deal that he would keep his flat if he stayed clean and followed the program. Val is worried that he is taking on too much responsibility with Bob and Betty, and that he might relapse. She tells him to stay focused and to not let anything distract him from his recovery. Betty takes Bob to be neutered. As unneutered cats don't last long on the streets, the operation goes well, and Bob gets a cone around his head to stop him from licking his stitches. James and Bob live together full time, and one day, Bob follows James to the bus stop and jumps in the bus with him. He is annoyed, but the other passengers are charmed by Bob, who sits on his lap and enjoys the view. The ticket conductor gives him an old shoelace as a leash. James and Bob get off at Covent Garden, a busy spot where he plays his guitar. Bob is not good on the leash, so he puts him on his shoulders. They attract a lot of attention and tips from the crowd, and he's thrilled. He asks Bob if he wants to do it again tomorrow. Boz, James's old chunky friend, sees them and follows them. He looks worse than before, while he looks better. James buys a harness and better food for Bob with his new income. He invites Betty, his neighbor, and Crush over for dinner, but she says that she's vegan and offers to cook at her place. He agrees and they have soup while Bob watches. James is coming back from the grocery store one day when he finds Boz unconscious outside with a syringe next to him. He calls for help and Betty comes out to assist. But Boz dies in the hospital, and Betty tells him that her brother also died of an overdose in her house. She looks sad and angry, and James decides to quit drugs for good. He asks Val to stop giving him methadone, but she thinks it's too soon and risky. He insists and locks himself in his flat to go cold turkey. James and Bob are at Covent Garden, where he plays his guitar and Bob draws a crowd. A dog walker starts a fight with James, and the police show up. James is cleared by the CCTV footage, but Val is called in. She finds out that James stopped taking his methadone and tells him to go back on it or she won't get Bob from the kennel. James is scared of losing Bob and runs to the pharmacy. He drinks the methadone, but Betty, his neighbor and girlfriend, sees him, realizing that he's a drug addict and breaks up with him. James is banned from playing at the Covent Garden for 6 months and loses his income. He gets a job at The Big Issue, a magazine for the homeless, and sells it with Bob. Bob attracts customers, and a journalist takes their photos. Another seller is jealous of James and picks a fight with him. James is banned from selling for a month. He has no money to feed Bob and busks on the street corners. Betty is angry with him because he could go to jail if he gets caught. She yells at him, but also confesses her feelings. James goes back to selling Big Issues, but a woman tries to buy Bob from him. She says that James can't take care of him because he's poor. They argue and a dog scares Bob away. James looks for Bob for 2 days, but can't find him. He's tempted to buy drugs from the dealers near his flat, but he resists. On the 3rd day, he finds Bob in his kitchen, and he is overjoyed. And then he decides to quit methadone for good. He asks Val to stop giving him the dose, but she warns him that the withdrawal will be hard. He tells Betty that he will lock himself in his flat for a few days to get clean. She opens the door for him and offers to bring him food. James suffers from the withdrawal symptoms for a week. He's in pain and vomits everything he eats. Betty brings him groceries, but he is alone with Bob. He fights the urge to go out and score. James recovers from the withdrawal symptoms and wakes up feeling free of drugs. He says goodbye to Val, his support worker, who is proud of him. He tells her that he is going to move in with Betty, who has forgiven him. He also tells her that a literary agency has contacted him and wants to write a book about him and Bob. James goes to the meeting with the agency, and they gave him a laptop and a ghostwriter to help him write his story. He is excited and grateful. He also visits his father, Jack, who apologizes for his past mistakes and welcomes him back into the family. The book, A Street Cat Named Bob, is released and becomes a huge hit. Hundreds of people line up outside the bookstores to buy it and meet James and Bob. James is invited to do book tours and press conferences, and Betty and Jack join him. The book's success allows James to quit his street jobs and buy his own home. James and Bob are still inseparable, and they work for organizations that help at-risk youth and animals. And yes, the real Bob still rides on James's shoulder everywhere. And with that, our story comes to a happy ending. And that's how a street cat named Bob changed James's life for the better. But what do you think? Do you believe that animals can have such a powerful impact on humans? Do let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more.